And that's why we're here. But before I make my brief remarks in relation to the annual report, let me be very upfront about how I perceive the purpose of this media briefing to be. I'm aware that there has been a lot of hunger out there to ask me questions that have got nothing to do with the performance of the courts. And I got a sense that some thought that I was somehow running away from having questions put to me. And I realized that people really don't understand me. I'm not the sort that runs away from his responsibilities. I'm not the sort that runs away from confronting issues that needs to be confronted. I believe with all of my heart that everybody, particularly leaders, must own up to their utterances, must own up to their actions, must assume full responsibility for everything they say. It is irresponsible of any leader to shy away from dealing with issues flowing out of what he or she has said. So I'm upfront in saying I'm here to present myself for questioning on anything, even if your questions would be about everything except the Judicial Accountability Report. I am here to tackle those questions as frontally as circumstances demand that I do. Turning to the Judicial Accountability Report, I'll be brief.
Yesterday, right here at Tembisa Hospital, you delivered the keynote address there, and then at the end you closed with that prayer. Some of us tweeted that prayer, and there's been quite a lot of backlash as far as the contents thereof. Among the things that were raised was the fact that there is some politicking that is taking place within that prayer of yours. Any reaction to what, if you would have seen so far, to what has been happening on Twitter? I know you're not friends with Twitter, but there's been a lot of negative comments coming to you with what you've said there on the vaccine specifically for COVID-19.
I don't know whether people, I haven't been paying attention to Twitter. I honestly do pay very little attention to the media. I don't know whether people honestly misunderstood what I said or deliberately misunderstood what I said. And maybe it's necessary to reiterate what I said. I said, if there is any vaccine that is being manufactured to advance a satanic agenda of the mark of the beast 666, if there is any vaccine that is being manufactured for the purpose of corrupting the DNA of people, that vaccine must be burned, it must die. God must intervene and destroy it. So anybody who supports a vaccine that infuses 666 in the bodies of people, anybody who supports a vaccine that is meant to corrupt the DNA of people, I would understand if they raise an alarm. That's it. I want every corrupt thing to be destroyed. And if it is politics, it is the kind of politics that I'm happy to advance anytime, anywhere. So people must come out. Do they support the satanic agenda? They must tell us what. They want us to have a 666 mark. They must tell us what. I'm not saying all vaccines, and I never say all vaccines are meant to advance their agenda. But if people want it to be made to look like, that's what I was saying, that's their problem. I'm never worried about backlash, because I've realized something. It's almost as if for you to be positively reported on, you must check what is it that people are likely to be favorably disposed to. What will the analysts say, the regular analyst I must say? What will the media say? I'm not that kind of a person. I don't live to be approved of. I don't suffer from affirmation or approval addiction. I reflect on what I believe needs to be said at any particular time, and I say it. Whoever wants to run wild with it is free to do that. I will never look backwards to check who is happy with what I'm saying, who is unhappy. I am independent-minded. For far too long, people have been afraid to express themselves as freely and as robustly as they need to. Remember, we just delivered a judgment as the Constitutional Court recently about the fundamental importance of freedom of expression, the EFF judgment. So people are not going to be allowed to manipulate us, to force us to toe their line, to think the way they think everybody else in this country and around the world ought to think. I'm not in that category. I'm not worried about fictional reputation. Oh, this is how a Chief Justice is supposed to behave. This is how a judge is supposed to behave. Where is the manual for that? Where do you get it from? What are you trying to have us comply with? I'm not a conformist. Our country, our constitution does not demand of us to be that way. So I didn't watch the backlash, but maybe it was not unexpected. Remember what I said to the CEO and the chairman? I said, you know, if they come against you for what I'm going to say, because I know prayer is controversial in South Africa. Insults are never controversial. No, it is prayer in the name of Jesus that is controversial. All other prayers are fine. So I'm not going to be begging for permission to pray. Never. In public and in private. I'm going to pray all the more. It is my constitutional right. I'm a Christian. I'm not going to be hypocritical. Being a robust Christian in private, in public, I pretend. Maybe so that when I deliver judgments that are in line with my Christian principles, people cannot spot it. I'm not that kind. We need to be open, we need to be transparent, and that's where I am.
Okay. Madam, over to you.
Slinda Lomasigane from ENCA. Just to add on to my colleague's questions, where do you get this information from, Chief Justice, about a vaccine that's alleged to infuse the Antichrist in people's DNA? My second question is, you have been criticized for not being able to separate your religious beliefs from your office. Do you think those criticizing you are missing the point, perhaps?
Well, for starters, one, did I assert as a fact that there are vaccines with 666? Two, where do you get this thing of separating my judicial responsibilities from my Christian beliefs from? Where can we look for it, in the Constitution or anywhere else? The last time I checked the Constitution, it lists among the fundamental rights freedom of religion, freedom of opinion, and freedom of thought. And two, not only does the preamble to our Constitution talk about God, for God to protect us and to bless us, but the national anthem also alludes to the need for us. In fact, it's a prayer for God to protect us. So where do we get this thing from? Some people say we are a secular state, but what is the meaning of a secular state? A secular state is not a state that is anti-religion. It is a state that is against the imposition of one religion to the exclusion of others. So this notion that you must separate the state from religion is misplaced. So where do you get it from? If you have it, point me to it so that I can address it. And so the thing about the vaccine, I'm not asserting it as a fact. I know that there is a lot of corruption in the world, in South Africa, in Africa, and elsewhere in the world. Look at what allegedly happened to the money that was allocated for the protection of people in this era. What happened? I tell you, if I had prayed openly before allegations of corruption in relation to that matter surfaced, if I had said, Lord, anybody who's going to be involved in corruption in relation to this money, deal with that person. You know what the response was going to be? The same question you are asking. Where did you get the information from that there is corruption in relation to the funding for COVID-19 related matters? So I'm crying unto God. Whether you call it politics or not, it's neither here nor there for me. And I won't stop doing it. I'm crying unto God. If there is any vaccine, I don't want it. I'm crying unto God for, this is the end time according to we Christians. So if there is any vaccine with 666, I want God to destroy it. If there is any vaccine meant to corrupt the DNA of people, I'm asking God to interrupt with it. Any clean vaccine, they must produce it quickly. People need that for their own health. So if anybody is going, don't pray against 666. Don't pray against Satan. Don't pray against corruption of the DNA. They can criticize until. I'm not worried about that.
Just lastly on my part, Just last on my part, Chief Justice, the issue is that some of the scientists who make part, who form part of the ministerial committee that's advising government on how to deal with this pandemic are criticizing you and saying that a person of your stature, you're misleading people with that prayer by alluding to the fact that there could possibly be a vaccine that could infuse the Antichrist in people's DNA.
Well, people are not fools, and maybe there is an assumption that our people are thoughtless, and maybe there is an assumption that whatever somebody says in the public domain, our people are so foolish that they will swallow it without reflection. I refuse to buy into the narrative that our people are idiots, our people are thoughtless, our people will just embrace whatever Mogoeng says because it's in the public domain. Here is my position. My prayer is meant actually, and I hope it does, touch every well-meaning Christian to cry unto God and say, Lord, indeed, if there is any vaccine that would have this result, if there is any vaccine that would negatively affect the lives of people, that vaccine must never see the light of day. So people must pray against that. It's important. You can't say we must, as Christians, just hold our arms and say, yeah, no, whatever people come up with is fine. No, we can't. People must pray. People must pray. Not everybody accept, as you've reported. Some people have already said, no, this is wrong. Those are the people who will never buy into this. It's a clear indication that our people are not idiots. They are not just going to embrace what I say. Others will take it as a prayer point. Others will reject it for whatever reason. That's how it's supposed to be. So I'm not going to be saying, hey, the scientists are saying this. No, I'm not a scientist. I'm a prayer warrior. And I'm encouraging prayer warriors to pray.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, Chief Justice, again, in that prayer that you delivered, Imabane at Tembisa,
yes.
Before you said what I'm going to say right now, you did make mention of the fact that I will not apologize for praying.
Yes.
And then you reached out to God to say, judge those
yes.
who continue to perpetuate corruption,
yes.
to enrich themselves
yes.
and their friends. Any names behind
no.
that statement?
No. And that is the same thing with this prayer against the vaccines. The reality is there is corruption in South Africa, in Africa, and in the world. Why should I be targeting people? Do I know who is corrupt? Was I there when they committed corruption? How can I name people? I'm basically saying, I believe that we know so much about corruption practitioners in South Africa and across the nations of the world. But God knows everything. So anybody who's looking clean and smart, in fact, pointing fingers at others as the corrupt, when in fact they are themselves corrupt, they must be exposed. I don't have the power to do that, but I'm asking God, in whose unlimited power I have confidence, to expose them, and if they don't repent, to judge them, and judge them speedily and harshly. That's where I'm coming from. The same, I mean, you can't tell me there is no medication with side effects. You can't tell me that. So what is this about this vaccine that people must believe that there can't be anything wrong about it? What is it? What are we afraid of? Why do we want to beat people into silence about it? Why? We must speak freely about this thing. It's a free country. We must speak freely even about the origins of coronavirus. We must speak freely. This is a free country. People must be very careful about wanting to take us back to the era of colonialism and apartheid, where freedom of thought and opinion was not allowed. They must be very careful. And I'm not going to be silenced. I don't care about the consequences. We've been quiet for far too long, towing the line. I'm not going to tow any line. And it doesn't matter how many people criticize me. When I believe that I need to address this issue, I'm going to do it. When I feel the prompting of God to address it, I will. I'm not going to look back and say, hey, they are coming. You know what they have done to you ever since you were nominated for the position of Chief Justice, and they never stopped. They are coming. People have been critical ever since. What has it achieved? It has never been able to bring me down as was apparently hoped for. And I'm still there. This God has never failed me.
I don't know Madam, if you have follow-ups, I don't see hands from the colleagues who are joining online. Am I missing? Oh, I'm so sorry, I couldn't see you. Go for it.
Sure, Bernadette Wicks, the Citizen. I have a couple of questions. So I do have one question on what you were saying yesterday, and that's really just a question of clarity. Essentially what I'd like to understand is, if I'd be correct in saying what you were praying against was a vaccine that would carry with it dangerous side effects or anything like that. So I just want to understand that I understand correctly.
That is it. And if there is any vaccine that is deliberately intended to do harm to people, that vaccine must never see the light of day.
Okay.
And any other medication, by the way, I extend it to any other medication that is intended to be harmful or that will accidentally be harmful to the people in this country, in this continent, and around the world. That medication must never see the light of day. I cry unto God to stop it from seeing the light of day.
And then along the same lines, following on from that, when and if a vaccine does become available here in South Africa, I just want some clarity in terms of whether or not you would encourage people to take up that vaccine and to get vaccinated.
No, it's not my, I don't know anything about vaccines. What I can say now is that I don't think the vaccine must ever be compulsory. I saw something to the effect that, and I hope it was a lie, a statement attributed to a very important global organization, to the effect that they are considering e-vaccine or e-vaccination certificate for traveling. It must be voluntary. People must just run tests on us. If we are not positive, they must allow us to travel. You can't impose a vaccine on people. Why should you? Why should I have a vaccine in my system if I'm not positive? So those who bear the responsibility to make sure that the vaccine works, those who can vouch for the effectiveness of the vaccine and that it doesn't have negative side effects, must be the ones to propagate it. I'm not a scientist, but what I do is that I'll pray for God's intervention.